Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Art Diaries, my series exploring the relationship and interconnection between art, spirituality, healing, and creativity. And today I have my dear friend, Miggy Angel, who is a poet, a photographer, and also an artist mystic. I
Oh, I
think
like it.
I think you were like the first artist mystic in my life before I realized that that was also my pathway. So it is with so much joy that I introduce Mickey to you guys today. We're going to be
Thank you.
talking. Oh wait, before we start that, would you like to introduce yourself? Do like a
I don't
self
think I
intro.
could do any better than you just have. No, thank you very much. I like that.
Oh,
Really
Mickey has a bunch of
covers
books
the
out.
bases.
Mickey has a bunch of books out and a book that's coming out soon, right?
Yeah, my fifth book is out this year. So I'm a little bit kind of not as involved really in sort of literature kind of scenes and circles at the moment. So that it will be out this year on Hester Glock Press with some amazing artwork by your good self. So yeah, that'll be out this year. But yeah, I'm not. I think people just find the stuff, don't they, and kind of find their way to the work, and it's nice to. Have an opportunity maybe to link in with people that are not aware of my work, but I'm really not the best promoter of my own work. I'm just yeah, it's out there. Five books. I've written 10 in all, and the goal at some point is to have them all out. But yeah, book number 5 comes out this year. Hester Glock Press.
That's
It's
awesome.
called My Culture Is Flowers.
I'll be posting a little bit about that in the description box or wherever the text is for this
Yeah.
video. And yeah, so it is confirmed my artwork is going to be on the cover.
Wow. Yeah. Oh my God, it's amazing.
Oh, that's so awesome.
It's
That is so
stunning.
awesome.
It's like, yeah, I don't know. I could just look at the cover. I don't even need to open the book. I think it's just that's it. It's a win.
I'm just so happy that we
Yeah.
finally got to like collaborate on in the mediums that we are kind of, I guess we started off with. That you started off with poetry and I started off with visual images, with drawing and illustrating.
Yeah.
And both of us have kind of like branched off in various different ways and then coming back to our main mediums, main forms of expression every once in a while, and just kind of like it feels like a flow. And that's kind of something that I have related to in terms of like in the years that I've been following your work. And it's something that I've also found comfort and inspiration and also guidance in. Just your ability to like be dedicated to creativity and also allow it to change forms, change the forms that change the way that it wants to be expressed through you. So would you like to talk a little bit about your relationship to creativity in general and like maybe where you started and where you are now, but what's the relationship between that or whatever that feels good for you to start off with?
Yeah. I mean, when you was talking about kind of dedication to creativity, it's not really a conscious thing that I sort of make. It's my relationship to creativity is extremely intense. So it I just have to be kind of involved in some kind of all-encompassing kind of project, even if I'm working really hard and I'm taking breaks. Like people, you're talking to me at the beginning of the conversation today about my writing, but at the moment I'm focused on my visual work. So if you look at my Instagram, where I'm sort of documenting my progress through learning film photography, it looks incredibly intense. It looks like I'm, generating a lot of photographs and generally, 100% dived into it. It's pretty much how I kind of relate, really, my experience and relationship to creativity. It's funny as well because it really feels like coming home as well, kind of to be, doing the photography stuff. And when you introduced me as a poet and also a photographer, I probably wouldn't have been comfortable with that kind of description even like a couple of months ago, but I actually really feel like I'm okay to inhabit that moniker. I think as well, since I've been doing portrait photography as well, it's kind of, there was a lot of work that I didn't want to do with photography until technically I knew what I was doing, because I don't know, that's just how once my work's on, then it's on. But there's a lot of work that has to go on behind the background of that. So working out what the heck you're doing before you start troubling people in public places and not knowing what the flip you're up to. So there's been quite a lot of that. And now I go out with a camera. If I have to camera them with people, I probably will, if you're walking, I probably will be like 100 meters behind, kind of engaging with somebody on the street, taking their portrait. And so I mean, I always used to say, just going back for the kind of my journey through creativity, if I could have been a painter, I probably would never have been a poet. And I used to say that quite a lot because I wanted to be a visual artist. And I think most of my poetry is pretty visual. When I first kept a blog about 10 years ago, I used to do a lot of essays on visual kind of culture. And I think, you know, the visual element of my development in so many different ways, and probably my most profound experiences have been through vision. So yeah, I do, because obviously I'm quite conscious sort of ableist language around this stuff as well, just around, you know, that's the only route to certain experiences, and it isn't, but just for me, kind of that visual experience has just been really just fundamental, I think, to some of my most profound experiences, just of reality, of the universe, of self or absence of self or vision. Most of the you know, I love William Blake. I love his paintings, I love his poetry, I love his writings. So a lot of you know, my experiences of being a creative person came through seeing. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah,
I
remember...
probably will waffle about there as well, because you know what I'm like.
Yeah, as long as you don't might be like putting
yeah.
a pin on it, because there are some things that I want to like kind of go deeper in, and one of the things was that your visual relationship with reality, because it comes through so clearly. I remember all those years ago, I think when you were beginning to start publishing your poems, and how visual, like you said, they were visual. It was as if you were using words like painting, like paint, like colors, like kind of mixing it around. At first, like one thing that kind of kept coming back to me was like how musical your poetry is. The verses have rhythm to it. The words are not just there because of what they signify, but also how they sound. And it took me a while to also kind of understand that it wasn't just the sound, but it was kind of like the color, the hue, the tone of the words. And when you place them next to each other, it was almost as if like it was the same energy of mixing colors together to get a new tone. That's kind of, especially with my culture and flowers, a lot of the sound of words really come into play and really kind of bridge the gap between the symbols of words and what they signify, and the visualness of reality for those of us who experience reality as visual. And I'd like to kind of maybe ask about, because I know you've mentioned a few times, and it's kind of also interwoven into your poetry, the spiritual experiences that you've had in your life, like spiritual awakenings and like visions, or even like just encounters. And a lot of it is kind of blanketed kind of comfortably and interwoven comfortably in the narratives that you talk about in your poems, with the narratives of gentrification and living through being displaced internally and externally, and creating a home out of a self that has been taken away from the self by an outside force. What I wanted to kind of key in on is how does how does the visual play in terms of your relationship with spirituality and reality? That makes sense.
Yeah, I think when you start becoming concerned with some of these questions, I think obviously then you're drawn to maybe material that, you know, or a culture of concern around these kind of questions. So I think for a long time, and kind of where I'm at the moment, is trying to rest in the lived experience of these questions rather than the material around it, because I think that's where we get lost. I was thinking before the conversation today, because I'm not really. I suppose I've tried to live beyond the symbolisms of what we're talking about, because I just think, I don't know. I remember when I was first sort of discovering literature and getting, you know, really pulled obsessively into that kind of pursuit of these questions. I just became aware of some of the circular nature of, you know, some of the literature around it or the conversations, and I realised that they were, I don't want to say like a trap, but it was like a way of being that I didn't that gave the illusion that it was towards something, but it was just a circular motion, and I just thought, I don't want to be there. I mean, the way that it was the question, sort of the way the visual interplays with my relationship to kind of spirituality, kind of to those experiences, and
Yeah.
I mean,
And
really,
also like maybe how, like, has that helped you, or how has it helped you with your relationship with reality as well? Because it's like some of the themes that you're working with is not really, they're not easy to look at, and you know that, right? You're very aware and conscious that these are themes that need to be shed a light in, because they don't exist in the light. So like by creating these works that bring them into the light, it's almost as if you're saying that, it's almost as if you're kind of, for me, what it feels like, it's like you are recreating or rebridging your relationship to reality in a way that honors where you've been and honors all these places that we don't see in the, you know, the kind of status quo light. And also you're in like the state of acceptance of moving forward while honoring all of these realities. So it's like, I guess I want to ask how does your relationship with visual
that was it. Yeah, sorry.
reality helps
Yeah,
you with reality.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, where I was heading with that was, you know, I suppose visual reality. So it's working out where the visual language that we've created meets the actual relationship of things as they are. And I suppose the pursuit of that is a pursuit of kind of clues and guesswork, and trying to use that visual kind of architecture as a way to find out what is the construct and what is things as they are. And I think that just for me personally, always had an very intense inner life. So I always felt like I was living dual experiences. I'm also sort of dual heritage, and I think there's a lot of my experience inhabits those grey areas. So I always felt like there was kind of these sort of secrets or things that weren't spoken about, that didn't correlate to my experience of the world. So I also had, you know, I had intense dreams when I was a kid. If I didn't have to work, and if I was able to kind of just, you know, focus on certain aspects of the stuff that we're talking about, I'm still, I don't really know if the word is premonitions, but I'm very intuitive. I can kind of tell you if I'm speaking to somebody who I'm very congruent with, my wife, for instance. I will make declarative sort of statements about things that are going to happen because I just feel 100% this is what's going to happen. I'll have a feeling. I used to have really strange kind of visual experiences when I was a kid. I think I almost used to fall into kind of almost wakeful meditative states where I used to lose perspective. So something that was like 6 inches away could be 6 miles away. So although later on now I see that as, especially once I started reading Blake, it's like, you're dealing with the infinite and the eternal, which is beyond measurement. So I had really primitive kind of intuitive kind of relationships with those things, but obviously I couldn't tell anybody because I was a kid, and I didn't know that people, there was writings or stuff that you could connect with, or so. I think visually, I'm in terms of visual work. I think I'm drawn to the fact that there's a secret in plain sight. I love the fact of that as human beings, we're surrounded, but we are the fish that don't realise, we're looking for the water. Hey, I've heard the rumour of this thing, the water, the fish, and we're running around going, yeah, where is it? Let's find it. And I think the visual arts that we have can kind of disrupt that, can kind of turn that back on the viewer in a way that I don't think anything else can. I'm not sure, I've written lines before about Instagram and say that this is a generation of people that are scrolling through images, not because they've got attention deficit disorders, but I think that on a subconscious level, we're searching for that one image that's going to kind of deliver us kind of instant enlightenment. I do believe in that. I do believe in that stuff. I do believe there's an image for every person that can unlock that secret, that can disrupt the kind of consensus thinking that we have around, because that's my experience. That is my experience. I have had those experiences. I've had where I almost see that kind of consciousness as well. It's almost like being in a really dark room. And for most of us, or for maybe all of us, at different times, it's a process of trying to press your hands around something that kind of isn't there, but that doesn't really change. Enlightenment or kind of fresh perspective or moment of insight, I think, is when the panels move. And I believe that you can cultivate those experiences through intense observation and intense visual connection. And I've also got into what you'll find in my written work is, I suppose, ideas of the uncanny, although they're not ideas that are fleshed out. I want that stuff to happen through images, so that there'll be the presence of something through an image that might have an element of the uncanny. Freud's Das Unheimlich. It's these experiences that show us that the secret is in plain sight, but also that it's the most mundane secret ever. I think I used to say to you years ago as well, the biggest, the most mystical thing about the mystic is that there's nothing mystical about it at all. It's the most everyday. We are all kind of mystical cosmic geniuses of the universe. It's not, for me, it's just all these, the way I see people, the way I see life, the way I see the macro and the micro of it. It's not mystical to me, and I don't think it ever really has been. And I think the secret is that to all of us it isn't. So I suppose my work visually kind of is engaged in these sort of questions, but also I suppose the work that you see that was published and that has been published was that when my work was just about these themes, it didn't work. So what I had to find a way of was incorporating the stuff that you see. Like, my stuff is really, really grounded in something, material, but also there's this pull between, the secret in plain sight.
Yeah, so it was almost as when you what I'm getting right now is kind of like it's like before, maybe like there was a lot of activity or a lot of like involvement with like the etheric element of creativity, and now you're kind of and now, because you said that it wasn't working, something wasn't working for you with that format, with that framework, so now you're almost as if like you're finding ways to kind of find that bridge between the etheric and the material. And like you said, like your work has gotten more grounded, and it definitely shows. And I've also been able to see like the progression of your photography, where you started off with street photography almost as if like an anonymous observer, and you went from that to, when the pandemic hit, you went to taking pictures of setting, of place as portrait. It was almost as if you were taking a portrait of these different aspects of the place around you, and the colors that were popping out. I got so excited when you started using color in your photography, because I was just like blown away by what you were able to see and what you were able to record from what you were able to see with color. Because I don't know, it just kind of like lifted, it elevated and it grounded it in some way. And now you're doing portraits where you're actually like inviting people to be in this exchange with you. Would you say that that's also one way that you're becoming more kind of there's more of a balance between the etheric and the material in your relationship to reality?
Yeah, because I mean, the photography is still poetry to me. So I don't see any. There's no rupture there for me. And what I mean, a lot of what I do with my creativity as well, sometimes it looks very intense and just wow, but a lot of it is very deliberate. It's very, very, very deliberate. So, the intention at the moment is to complement my written work with a visual body of work. So I don't look at it in terms of, oh, what's my creative legacy and I'm leaving a body, because to me a lot of that stuff is around, it's the ego-driven sort of pursuits of the arts industry and how they kind of collate stuff, and this is his important work of, no. I'm this kind of being moving through this plane, and like a candle, I'm only going to burn for so long in this form. So that's just like, creativity is energy. We only get so much of it. I'm a bit older now. I don't have as much energy or creativity through the day, so I have to kind of pass up and kind of manage my creativity. My visual work is me using the creativity that I have left to make sure that my creative kind of footprints include visual footprints and not just a big load of books. And so that's really, really important to me, because I didn't end up a painter. I haven't made a film yet, although I still really would love to. One of my goals is still to make a film. That's also where the visual kind of journey hopefully is heading. Yeah, I mean, the thing with me with either my books or my photography, or I never really question them. I never question their validity. I always feel like it's as important or as unimportant as anything else. I never have that, and I've never really needed. I don't need anybody to tell me, hey, keep going and you should really do this. I just there's a guy whose account that I'm following on Instagram. He was a 6x6 medium format photographer, who just kind of documented an area in Leeds, in Yorkshire in England. And he's only recently, I think he's still alive, but his work is really kind of, kind of drawn attention as a visual document of that period. It's amazing work. And I just think everybody's stuff is really important. It's part of the sort of this human history and the creative moments through time. So, and I don't think anybody's is I don't really do that kind of compare and contrast. I just think it's all part of that kind of dream that we're weaving through art. So yeah, it's really important to me to leave a visual document of kind of how I saw things, how it fitted in with my written work. And also, when I lived in West London, when I was living in a bed and breakfast homeless persons unit in West London. I've been in drug rehab for about 2 years. I got involved with a small college it was for under 25s who were unemployed. And it was amazing. They introduced me to photography. I had a camera, a film camera. I had a dark room. I was making prints. And it was an amazing experience, and I absolutely loved it. I look back at some of my prints as well, and I really see like still elements of like my eye and my composition, and like when somebody would take a picture of I don't know, like a car or something, I would get somebody to kind of maybe take a jumper off and put it on the floor near the car, and there was all these little visual kind of. I didn't have a clue what I was doing, and I couldn't keep it going because digital photography was really important for me because it helped me learn photography, and I didn't have the luxury of that to go. I didn't have any money, and although you did get materials, I didn't quite have the amount of film that I would have needed to actually learn the exposure triangle. I just couldn't get it. My daughter's doing a photography course at college at the moment, and I see the struggles that she has with exposure. But why change the aperture? It is a bit of you do have to keep shooting, and it just makes sense, and it's easier to do that through digital. So with the photography, I feel like I'm going home. I'm going home to that kid who was 22. And I just couldn't pursue the photography at that point. And I don't know if I could have, maybe I wouldn't have written. I really don't know.
Wow, yeah.
The thing with the writing was that no one can stop you do it. There is no exposure triangle. There's a pencil and a piece of paper, and that's it. And
yeah.
Anybody can have access to it. I remember as well when at that time I went to try and get on it was the North Kensington video drama course they were doing amazing work, and I didn't get onto it. And I remember that as well. That really almost sort of put me off the visual route that I was going down, because I just thought people can stop me doing this stuff that obviously I intensely feel like I have a right to be, pursuing. And I think that was where the writing came in, because it just felt like nobody can stop you writing,
Yeah, that's really resonant for me as well, because I mean, my struggle with like the art career, and when you said that people can take this away from you, I really felt that, because I felt that. I've been through that. Yeah, and it's scary, because it's scary, but it's also kind of profound, and at the same time it's like something that we have to, it's almost like our responsibility to reconcile with, or to reckon with, as artists, as caretakers of the art that wants to be expressed through us and as us. It's like we're called into these certain challenges, and some of those challenges are alchemizing on such a deep cellular level.
Yeah.
And sometimes the size of the space that we're given in the world, and the size that we need, the space that we need for the artwork to come, does not match. There's no parallel, there's no symmetry between them. And when that happens, that alchemy process takes place, and suddenly the frameworks that we use, the formats that we use, the mediums that we use change. It's like, I still consider myself to be a watercolor artist, even though I don't have the space to create the big pieces that I really, really want to create. I don't have the funding, the support, or the network to create that support. And I don't have the capacity to create that network as well. Like, being a highly sensitive, neurodivergent, queer person in where I'm living right now, I currently don't have certain accesses that is going to be healthy for me. Because I've also done the whole route of, like, for my doing things for my art that took away pieces of my well-being, of my health, and just kind of burned it to ash. I've been through that as well. You've seen me go through that.
Yeah.
And when you said that, at least writing, it was just you and a pen and a paper, like no one can take that away from you. And I feel like that's something that I also keep coming back to in terms of like sketching and journaling, or even digital art, where I can make big pieces and then save them as a JPEG that can be, saved in a computer and in a hard disk, and I don't have to worry about storage at the very least, right? And something that I can spread and share around the world without worrying about having that physical support that I need as someone who does have certain health issues that impact my mobility. So that means I can't move. If I create big things, I can't move it on my own. But if I create big things that are digital, I can move it on my own. And that creates some form of sustainability with the process that needs to happen for the work that wants to be expressed through us to come out. And it reminds me of what Hazrat Inayat Khan said about how each of us is a note in the divine orchestra. So each of our soul has a note, has a sound. And I like to take it further and say that each of our soul essence has a sound, a fragrance. And you took it further by saying that we each have an image that will unlock for us something that will resonate with that soul essence. So I want to ask, do you think you have found the visual language or the language or the artistic expression that truly captures your soul essence? And is it one medium, or is it, after you've gone through the journey that you've gone through, have you come to realize that it is the amalgamation of all these mediums and frameworks and how they live within you? Like, is that the home that you're coming back to, or is it just visual culture, visual language?
I think probably it's for other people to cut, especially with the visual work. I suppose you hope maybe that you hit an image that maybe is, not for you, it's for somebody else. So it's part of that, whatever that story is for that person. So, I mean, for me, it's like reality is, as we understand it, I suppose, in culture, is constructed in a narrative of like, this is reality, you are this. And so for me, my chink through that has been, I suppose, in a visual way. So for me, it wasn't finding a particular image and then either recreating that in my work as an essence, or I mean, I'll tell you, the first kind of, I'm not sure really what to call it. It was, I suppose it's what people call enlightenment. I suppose it's that moment of, oh my God. I was on a top. I was actually, after a period of rehabilitation, residential rehabilitation, major changes, all this stuff I'm talking about, discovering bits of art, and I had a relapse. I ended up back in South London. I was on the top deck of a number 12 bus, and had a spiritual awakening. So it was just an experience of complete non-duality, hyper intensification of things as they are, without, and because it's not a non-dual experience, there is no kind of vantage point upon it. It's completely there isn't, when people talk about immersive, there is nothing more immersive.
It's like being dissolved completely in the water.
Everything dissolves away. You see kind of things as they are. It's almost like, if I'm going to use language, it's just energy. So it's just an emanation from one source, but that's not one source in terms of a binary. So hey, there's this one source here, but there is none of that crap goes on. Everything that is dissolved, that is gone. You are completely immersed in the oneness of everything, the rightness of everything, the absolute kind of nowness of everything. And yeah, at that moment, you kind of just feel like this is my life. I'm just, I suppose this is what I'd looked for, but also, it's just a complete feeling of kind of peace and being home and being just really found, I guess, by the universe. It's kind of, you just kind of, everything just kind of clicks into place. I mean, it is almost like, whether it's intense thinking or intense kind of image awareness, it's like clicking this thing, kick, 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 kick. And there is a point where that stuff, something can click. You can have a moment where you just kind of see things actually as they are in that intense way. You step out of, I mean, another one of the most intense experiences that I've ever had was when my daughter was born. And for me, it wasn't about the reasons that sometimes people talk, because for me, it was a total dissolvement of ego. And sometimes when people say, oh, when my daughter was born, she, and it's all this ego story about my daughter and this is my child and I'm a father, it's all
it becomes more like a possessive narrative than anything else.
It's like that ownership, propriety. So I control life. I created a human. It was amazing, because it totally kind of validated all my beliefs of entitlement and that I'm God, basically. Mine was the absolute opposite of that. Mine was, my daughter was born, it was quite intense and traumatic because of kind of what we went through. And when she was given to me, she was wrapped and given to me, she looked into my eyes and she had the most intense, unindoctrinated by human bullshit. Absolute, I don't want to use the word pure because then you've got sort of impure, and but kind of like a clear window on the universe. Where this presence had come from was not from a world of books, from culture, from man, woman, child, bat, wall, car. None of that stuff meant anything. Miggy meant nothing. Names meant nothing at all. And she looked at me, and it was with these absolutely clear seeing eyes of a presence that was from that intense connection with the source, with things as they are. Absolutely. And I realized that everything was bullshit at that moment. That I was so aware of my potential as a human being, with a name, with all this bullshit that it's just a story. It's just stories we tell ourselves. And that was an intense. I've spoken to Rosa about this as well, and it's part of like the family story of. Why there's nobody else? I wonder why I don't hear this story as well. Because to me, I don't know. You're looking into the eyes of somebody who's never looked into the eyes of anybody before. So there is no preconception of anything other than raw 100% congruent presence. And it was visceral. It was like being hit. It was like being punched. It was such an intense experience, but beautiful as well, because it was just like, whatever goes on, she's 17 at the moment, whatever, you know, the narrative between us, the story, our connection is that. That is our connection. Our connection is on a completely unfiltered, cosmic, plane. That's where it started, and really that's where all of our experiences start. So yeah, and I remember being aware of that. You know, that unravels, doesn't it? We be getting indoctrinated into a culture. We adopt a name. Hey, I'm so and so. I remember where I went through this period as well, just really annoying everybody when people would say, you know, like places. I'm like, there's no such place. Nottingham doesn't exist. Somebody just sat one day and said, we'll call this Nottingham. You know, it's just all a bloody story. You know, it's all a story because we need to feel in control. I think, you know, things are pretty terrifying. We're afraid. And if we construct all this stuff, we'll maybe feel less afraid and we'll be able to control and manipulate. But at the end of the day, it is just sort of stories. I mean, I'm not sure that I've captured anything that absolutely that encapsulates my essence creatively or spiritually or my story. But looking back in a less intense way, having come through probably, you know, the last 10 years has been incredibly intense period of creativity. I'm really happy with what I've produced. I'm happy with the books that I've written. Nothing's perfect, you know. It's making peace with, you know. So I don't know. We're gonna, you know, I ran back in and grabbed what I could, you know, before it all fell down. Or we're gonna quibble about what I was able to grab with my bare hands out of the wreckage. Are we at that point? Am I going to hold myself to? Yeah, but you didn't get the sofa, and you didn't get. Okay, but hey, look what I did. Look what I did. Look what I managed to grab. I'm okay. I'm all right with that. Some people don't, you know, for whatever reason, don't manage to grab anything. I lost a lot of people when I was sort of in my teens, and a lot of people that didn't make it, and drugs, and, you know, all kind of bizarre, you know, ways that people don't make it. So I'm really grateful. 50 this year. I mean, I took a photograph recently. I've not put it on my Instagram yet. I think I put it on my stories. But I'm really happy with it. It's
Do you have it with you? We can screen share.
Yeah, I might be able to find it, or I could send it to you and you could insert it maybe.
I'd love to. Yes.
It's a picture of a wolf-looking dog, and it's staring into a gate. And me and Rosa walked past it, and I had the TLR, so I was shooting medium format. The light was amazing. I also had some really nice Kodak filming. So it's got a really strange atmosphere to it. And the thing is that just before I took the photo, the dog was actually looking at me. And it was one of those that when I walked away, I thought, oh God, I know I snapped it as the dog looked away. But that moment of accident has actually worked really well, because the dog is looking through a gate. And the gate is full of light, and there's something really, really uncanny about it. It's the sort of work that I enjoy looking at. I enjoy looking at stuff that I can return to and keep seeing different stuff in it, and that doesn't give me everything straight away. So I've probably got a few bits and pieces, a few photos and some poems that I think were me getting into a ballpark area where I was aiming for. I think with the writing, I was trying to trying to encapsulate the poetic, the uncanny, something real and raw, but also do something with language as well. So I think, no, you know, I worked really, really hard at my written poetry. I put a lot of work into it. Something I, you know, I worked incredibly hard to develop the style and to have a lot of different elements like the musicality. It was always like a trade-off between, you know, the divine and the profane, kind of the image and the absence, the music and the noise, and also the content and the form. You know, I think you've got. For me, all this stuff works when you've got a balance between all those. So they're not just one thing. That there's more happening. So. So yeah, I feel okay that at the end of whatever this creative period that, you know, that was my life and me just grabbing what I could before it all fell down, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. We could always do different stuff. There was stuff that I was writing years ago that never got published. I've still got lots of unpublished stuff, and but yeah, if some of that stuff had got published, if I'd had a book out or a novel out 15 years ago, I might have gone down a completely different route. I think what's really evident to me is, you know, I've been threatening to write a play on gentrification in Southeast London for the last 20 years, and nobody's still written it. You know, it is like there are certain stories and certain things that you are on the spot to kind of observe and maybe put out there, you know. And so I think I'm speaking too much, right?
No, it's fine. It's fine.
You, how are you doing?
Ugh, I don't know how I'm doing right now. I'm currently at the stage where I don't know.
What are you up to? What are you working on, dear?
What am I working? Oh, I don't know. I don't want to talk about me today. Which is strange because you know, usually I'm okay to talk about this, but I don't know. I'm going through something where I just don't want to talk about myself right now.
No worries.
Yeah, we can talk about that after the recording.
Yeah, all right, no problem.
I wanted to say, but yeah, I mean, thank you for asking. But I wanted to ask about because you mentioned that, you know, finding a balance between these dichotomies that we have to live with and we have to tend to in this material plane, while also acknowledging that something that you always that has always kind of stuck with me, that you said was nothing is mundane, that it's all sacred, that even the most minuscule day-to-day thing is imbued with the divinity that we seek. We tend to seek it. We tend to go on these like journeys to seek it, but it's already right there, right in front of us. And the balance for me in the way that you embody that is in the balance between holding and letting go. Because I remember our conversations about finishing projects. And I know that this is, well, you asked what was going on with me. I do know that what's happening with me this year is kind of reckoning with some of the patterns that I have adopted from some of the more traumatic experiences that I've had with the industry, and kind of relearning how to finish projects. Because I realized that one thing that I forgot, or one thing that I kind of let burn down when the house was burning down, metaphorically, was the ability to kind of, or I don't know, something kind of like just disconnected from me, and I'm trying to reconnect with it. And I know that it has something to do with completing artwork and completing projects, seeing it to fruition, seeing it to its fulfillment in the ways that it wants to be completed. So it's not just about you and your capacity, but I mean, it's taking that into account, but also taking into account where this work wants to be when it's done with you. And for you, it's, you know, knowing exactly the poems that's supposed to go in these manuscripts, and also like trusting the manuscripts to be completed into books and to be out there in the world. And I know that when we were talking about this, you mentioned the importance of completing work, because it had something to do about that relationship, that divine relationship with the works that want to be walked out of us. Do you want to speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where my work would be if I had the first book come out. So when Graham Curbstone's Psalms, which was my first book, was published, that was such a relief on a lot of levels, because obviously my life goal was to have a book published. So I achieved that. It was a brilliant experience. We had a book launch in Nottingham, and it was just wonderful. And it was like, I've been through a lot of crap in my life. I kind of felt like I owed, people, not so much like, it was more just, I think, people that loved me, just to let people know that I hadn't wasted my life, in some way. I mean, people that root for us, or see you destroying yourself, especially when you're involved with stuff like drugs. I mean, you're just aware that you are kind of just torching your life and any potential that you've got. So it's like a massive, massive thing to me. But what it really did is it grabbed up all this work and just drew a line under it, because I was just writing. I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just amassing. I mean, it's really hard to say how much work I was amassing. It was just poem after poem after short story, everything. And then as soon as that book came out, it gave me an experience of seeing my work as in terms of projects. So this is a project, it's going to be a book, it's going to have a certain number of pages, everything's got to work, everything's got to earn its place. My editing process for individual poems, but also for finished manuscripts, is incredibly intense. Like, I print everything out once I get to a point, so I have a little book and I walk around with that, constantly moving pages around, taking stuff out. I'm brutal. If it don't fit, it goes. I don't, kill you. I don't even think that all the kill you darling stuff. It's absolutely, if this book doesn't, my commitment is to the book. So I have to be completely brutal with that. But yeah, so now, if like my culture is flowers, I kind of, once I knew that that's what I was working, then everything that I'm working on, it's almost like when I do creative writing workshops with the Do or Die poets, we talk about, you need to have an anchor or a magnet piece. So it's almost like you create a kind of a creative magnet that you say, this piece is now going to draw all the others towards it. So whether that's a poem, it could be an image, it could be a title. So start to develop something that is now going to start to evoke the rest of what it needs towards it. So I suppose I started working in ways like that. And also, I think with finishing projects, it's really about being open to the ways that the work itself wants to finish. Because we get into this really, like, we start imposing all this stuff, like, I'm the author, and this doesn't, and it's, you definitely need elements of that, but that again is another story, so is it the author, or are we just part of a great kind of cosmic brooming that's kind of pushing data and experience and emotions and stories and text and images into different little piles? I think a lot about, the myth of the author. Do I write the poems, or are the poems writing me? I don't know sometimes. I mean, budge out of the way and let that happen occasionally. The amount of times I've had a manuscript and I've been thinking, oh my God, I'm really busy, I need to finish it off. And then I go back to it after a period of time, I'm like, I think it's finished. I think it's done. It's just done. So it's just, you do definitely get better at it. I think as you start to finish stuff, and you get because I think we're all crippled by perfectionism as well, aren't we? So saying that something's finished is like, what, I can't add another kind of shade of blue to that picture? What do you mean? But I've only used 32 shades of blue. Surely there's enough missing. Someone will notice. Or, you know, when there's a book, it's like, oh, you know, ringing the publisher to say, but I need to take that comma out. What comma's that? What do you mean, what comma? Page 72. Oh my God, I thought I could trust you. I thought you knew me, buddy. You just start letting it go. You just start letting it go. I tell you what, when I used to blog as well, that was really, really helpful for me. That pressing that publish button. And although you could edit it,
Yeah, really, I was going to say you could edit it.
Yeah, you can edit it, but it was just putting stuff out. But yeah, I mean, people that do that stuff on a massive level, I'm not sure that I would love all. You know, people that put stuff into the internet and it goes to like hundreds of thousands, millions of people. I don't think I would like that level of kind of, yeah, I'm okay with this going out. But yeah, I mean, you know, yeah, I would say try to relate the ending of the project to something in your lived experience. We know when we're sated, as far as having had a meal, we're fed. It's great. That was a great. I don't know. We kind of rarefy kind of art projects when really they're as mundane and you know, kind of rooted in those experiences of or those notions of enough or kind of, you know, finished. Also, another thing though, there was a point where I started to view all of my books as part of one book. So that was really helpful because I started then to see they don't really finish. I mean, I had 2 books out last year that both, if you read Boy Beastry, at the end of that, it's quite brutal, materialistic breaking down of kind of a boy in a really difficult kind of milieu and sort of social environment. But the final chapter is kind of almost like a breaking through. It's a completely different chapter. And that chapter was written knowing that the next book, that boy became the dog-eyed boy of Hour of the Dog, who's then a boy who's a mystic in South London, kind of recounting the spiritual war for the heart of South London, which is gentrification in the area where I grew up. So then I started to see it less as, it just all became part of a bigger kind of narrative. And that was helpful to me as well, because it's kind of, I've got room, you know, room. It's a big old book. The way that I realised that as well is that I was going back to my old work and I've written this story about a guy called the Bookworm. And he was just this mythical character that I created. He was South London kind of down and out reader of books and holder of mystical secrets, who starts in showing this kind of character, which is kind of like me, but it's not me, who's writing this book. And there was a story that I read where there's this myth about a book being written, and the character, when the bookworm dies in this story, realizes that he's writing this book. And the book was called The Transpontine Scrolls. When I read that story, it was like a clue to my future self, because I thought, oh my God, that's me. And this 10 book super book is the Transpontine Scrolls, and that's what I've always been doing, and I didn't realize it. So
you've been painting a bigger picture this whole time.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's almost as if, like,
it all fits, and it's a big palette, you know.
So it's the big picture where everything fits. That's the image of your soul essence, would you say?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, that's a good way to round it off. Yeah, probably. Yeah, the 10 book cycle. Yeah, I mean, I hope at some point, you know, my work is not as intense as it is at the minute for whatever, you know, whatever reason. But I'm able to. So not the artwork, I just mean like my actual job kind of thing.
Right. Okay.
And I think, maybe
I was
right
just
there.
gonna, did you actually say that you wish you were less intense? I was like,
Yeah.
I was gonna be like, wait a minute, who am I speaking to here?
Yeah. And that, you know, and that I can kind of, I think probably just really explores kind of spiritual aspects, I suppose, more, be more kind of committed to that. I think probably at some point I'd like to maybe write, you know, essays and more reflective work, I think. Yeah.
I've been wondering if so yeah, so maybe we can be, I think we have time for like two more questions and sharing.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, I've been wondering whether you have any plans, or do you see yourself merging your poems, your poetry practice, and your photography practice, so that you're coming up with these? Because you did mention that the photography feels like accompaniments to your written language. Are you, do you have any plans of creating a project or sharings or something where the two are presented side by side or together in some way, like a photo essay book or an exhibition or something less formal than that, but also still, you know, like as a way to just kind of like merge them? Or are they going to remain merged within you, but separate in terms of how you present them to the world?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, I've got 31 rolls of film that are at the developers. So there was
Wow.
four rolls that I sent before, which is not like a big order. That would be a very small one for me. So so I've got a lot of visual work that is being processed by a lab that's going to come to me in the form of scans, and it's going to be quite intense to go through that, because 27 of those roles was while I was in London this week, just gone. I've done a lot of portraits, a lot of sort of environmental, architectural and street stuff. And I really want to, I can see how you get caught up in the Instagram thing of just like get material, put it on Instagram, which is kind of good. I suppose Instagram to me is like the photographer's version of an open mic, isn't it? It's like an open space where, so I'm thinking, you know, with writing, there's like, you can go places, you can make noise, and you can go, look at me, and you can kind of make connections. But I think, what's the equivalent for photographers? Like a photographer's open mic, it just doesn't exist. So I suppose it's Instagram. But I want to focus more on just sort of saying, taking stock of what I've been creating. I want to print more. You know, I'd like to send you a print. You know, send friends, people that, you know, that I love and respect. You know, prints. I think that's the best thing you can do with anything, poems, or, you know, give them to people that you love. And but I also just want to start seeing the images in print form, start a relationship with them as print artifacts, and start to enact that process that I've had with my poetry books with the photography. Like, start to think of, what is it that I've got here? What does it need? What is it asking me to kind of be a conduit for, to bring it together and make it happen? I had an idea for a really long form photography project based in the UK that would go on over years, and I had the loose title of Albion. So you kind of, ideas, obviously got to get William Blake in there somewhere. So Blake's Albion is the kind of mythical kind of England, and so yeah, I definitely want to make a book out of what I'm doing at the moment. But I definitely want to start printing. I want to start to, because a lot of why I'm shooting at the minute as well, and shooting as much as I can, I don't actually think it's sustainable. It's not because I think this is great and this is how I think. I'm kind of shooting because I shoot film exclusively at the moment. It's getting more expensive, although film is having a boom at the moment. I get the feeling, I don't know why, I get the feeling that a lot of the people that are into it at the moment might not be into it in 5 years' time. Prices are just go up. I mean, even if you see a lot of the medium format that I've been shooting over the last few months, that was absolutely specific to the fact that the lab that I was using was the cheapest in the UK, but quality was amazing. And I literally mean almost half the price of most places, like unbelievably respectable prices for developing and scanning. And I was also able to source these really cheap deals, especially I love Kodak Hector. I think you commented on some of the colours in my work. A lot of that is down to the fact that I've been using Hector, which is a Kodak film. I was able to get really cheap deals on eBay, and I was stockpiling it. And those deals are gone now, so it's gone. It's probably not twice as much, but not far off.
Wow. So
I don't really know whether it's sustainable, just money-wise, the way the market's going. And while I am able to do it, I'm just trying to shoot as much as I can to try and make something out of it. Definitely. And then further down the road is definitely want to make a film. If I've got my books, my poetry books, maybe a photography book, and at some point get to make a film, I can die happy. I'll be okay. My story as well. When I was on a tube in London when I was living in West London, so I was still not long out of rehab, and living in that bed and breakfast halfway house, bed and breakfast homeless persons unit. I haven't been in a halfway house. And I was on the tube, and this guy, I think he was an African guy, really strange encounter that you can sometimes have in London. Looking back, it was very boundary crossing. I don't know, because I was not that far away from living quite a kind of on the edge sort of life anyway. But yeah, the guy, he kind of pressed my arm like this, but he was almost like very dreamlike. He was very kind of, it's like I knew him, because if I didn't feel that with the guy, I would have probably reacted very differently.
Yeah.
But he asked me like the question, like what do you have to do before you die, kind of thing.
Wow.
And he kind of had me like that. And I had no connection to anything. I wasn't doing any poetry stuff or anything like that. And I just looked at this guy and I said, make a film. Oh. And I still remember that.
Wow.
To this day. So I still feel beholden to that experience of the guy kind of, what you need to do before you die. And that was the first thing that just came out of it. And he actually said, you must make a film.
Oh, wow.
And he had a very strong kind of African accent. You must make a film, he said to me. I always remember that. So wow. Do you remember a couple of years ago when I watched 1,000 films in a year?
Yes, I do remember that.
that because people think, when I was saying earlier that everything I do with my creativity is very deliberate, that was me separating myself from writing. I was trying to really focus my visual apparatus, and I was trying. So, and as well, I love movies, and I just had a goal to do that, and I watched 1,000 films in a year. I think it was 2018.
Was it 2019? I thought it was much more recent than that.
Yeah, 2018 it was. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
3 years ago.
Right.
Yeah. So my photography at the moment has all come out of that year. Really, I was training myself to
finding looking at a visual vocabulary. You're basically studying visual vocabulary through the lens of. Through the lens,
I find it very
literally.
hard to watch films at the minute though, because I kind of just OD'd on film.
Okay, I was wondering. I was like, are you still watching 100 films per day or something?
And that was my quota for the 10 years.
No, that makes sense. And I'm actually happy to hear that, because I think if you were still watching like a crazy amount of films, I'd be like, do you maybe need to take a break?
Yeah.
Because yeah,
You
I
have a
know
lot.
that Scorpio energy, right? Like kind of go to the deep end straight away.
Yeah.
And then we have to remind ourselves to kind of come up to the surface and take some
Yeah.
breathers, or else we're
Absolutely.
gonna just stay there in the deep end, at the bottom of the deep end forever.
Yeah. Scorpio energy in the house.
Yep. Oh, I
Uh,
love it. That's so amazing. That story though. Wow. I haven't heard that one. Thank you
yeah.
so much for sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. It felt like I actually had this strange encounter as well when I first moved here. I said I wasn't brave enough to reply because I was like, nope, I'm out. But basically, I was walking around town. This is before I moved to Penang, and this guy who I don't know, he just kind of appeared out of nowhere, and
Mm.
he's older, and he was kind of obviously like in a different realm. So I'm just like, I was a bit like, okay, red, like kind of like alert signs going up. But he stopped right in front of me and he was like, "Where do you come from?" And at that point, I like took a turn and went into a store just to kind of get away from it because I didn't have an answer. I just did not have an answer. But
Yeah.
and then when I went out from the store, he wasn't there anymore. And all the other times that I was in town, I didn't see this man again. But it was funny because like you said, like it was an encounter where it was like I kind of, on a soul level, it was like I knew this person. I didn't necessarily need it to know anything else about them, but it was just that moment of recognition. And there was something that made him ask. I mean, this was in town where there was, during a time where there were lots of tourists, and I don't know, I don't think I look like a tourist here in my home country, but yeah, I don't know, it was weird. It was
Yeah.
definitely a moment that kind of kept coming back to me when I think about when I'm at crossroads energy, which I'm currently dealing with right now. Like when I'm at a crossroad and I'm thinking about something that has obviously has impacted me on a level, and it's something that is difficult to hold. That question will pop up, like that interaction will pop up in my memory, and that question will come. It's like, where do you come from? And I was like, I still can't answer that. That was years ago.
Yeah.
Um, and it's funny because I'm currently like in the process of connecting to earth energy. I've been working deeply with earth energy and trying to kind of allow it into my art. My art has been there's been a lot of fire energy in my art. There's been a lot of water energy in my art. There's been a lot of etheric energy in my art, but there hasn't been a lot of earth energy, which is, that manifesting energy, the energy of completing the work and allowing it to find conclusion. I think it's so easy for me to conceive art and ideas and projects, but somewhere along the way, my ability to complete projects and allow them to go out into the world was wounded. Like that channel is still very wounded. And somehow the question, where do you come from, is kind of like lodged in that wound. And I need to find a way to reconcile with it in a way that it will let me heal. So, yeah, that reminded me of that. And it kind of also
Mm.
helped affirm that what I was feeling about that situation, the energies of that situation, like maybe that's something, like you sharing that is helping me realize that maybe I can look into the memory of that to kind of find what it was trying to teach me. Because every time it comes up, I get really uncomfortable, but I know that strong emotional charge is a sign that there is a message, that there is something there for me to see. um, and I haven't fully seen it yet. So thank you so much for sharing that.
No
um,
worries. Do you feel like the work that you're doing is maybe leading you to that question? Maybe, I don't want to say an answer to it, but maybe a correspondence to that question.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know if I'll be able to answer that question, at least not as a human person.
Yeah.
I think I don't like I almost like I it's so hard for me to identify as a person on most days. Most days I identify
Yeah.
mostly as like a spirit who is a guest in this body, or who is working with this body to be a guest in this world. And you've known, and we've spoken a little bit about some of my near-death experiences and how it felt like my spirit was like being pulled back, being pulled out, being pulled back into a realm where I'm not an I anymore, where I'm completely, like you said, dissolved in that moment of enlightenment. For me, I've had I've had countless moments where I was able to feel into that, where that was my present moment. But there is like a hunger, or no, maybe not a hunger, but there's some kind of like a homesickness inside me for something that isn't embodied, an existence that isn't embodied, that's pure light. In my challenge, I know that my challenge in this lifetime is to be embodied. Like a lot of people are talking about ascension. I'm like, I'm coming in here. You know, like that's my journey, is to come in here and to land in here and to really allow myself to land in here. And I think, yeah, that question, where do you come from? Because on Earth, everyone comes from somewhere. If we don't come from somewhere, we definitely come from some people. Because we need other bodies to conceive us. And there's a lot of trauma there for me with origins, that embodied origins, when it comes to home country, when it comes to family. Both of these things are very traumatically charged for me. So I guess like not being able to have a response to that question, even if it's another query, right? Even if it's not an answer, I do feel like that is showing me something about why it feels like I'm able to conceive this, I'm able to kind of like conceive this really high energetically charged art projects, but I'm not able to, well, not I'm not able to, but like the channel between that part of the process and the part of the process where they are out of me, you know, like where it's done and they're actually part of the world. That part is that there's a wound there. And it definitely echoes or reflects the wound that I feel being in my process of embodiment, where becoming from a being of like pure consciousness or light, and then and individualizing into a person, individualizing into a body, and experiencing so much pain and trauma in that journey, and then landing in the moment knowing that there is no way that I can move forward without accepting where I've been. Because if I were to do that, I'm not going to be fully embodied. So knowing the ask, the bigness of what that's asking of me, is kind of the same feeling that I get where if someone asks me, where do you come from? So suddenly, or even in a casual conversation, I literally have walked away from people. Just gone like blank face, disembodied, walked away from the room, walked out of the room, and people ask me, where do you come from? Like, especially if it's in Malaysia. Like if Malaysians ask me that, I'm like, I just blank face walk out the door because I don't know how to answer that. If it's other people asking me, okay, I've got a lot of practice with that. I can, you know, I can tell other people from different countries where I come from, because I can just go to this paper narrative of, yeah, I was born in Malaysia, I went to this places and this places and this places, and now I live here again. But to ask that question and to really ask the essence of that question, I don't have an answer for that. And I guess like I'm in the moment right now. I'm just realizing that yes, there is definitely something in there that I gotta go and explore.
Yeah, I think thanks for sharing that. But yeah, it reminds me as well of what we were talking about earlier with when Rosa was born. That experience, I think, is kind of woven into that question of where are we from, because Rosa at that point, having just been born, was like a messenger to me of where we're from. No matter the fact that as soon as she's born, we knew what her name was going to be, and we're starting to impose this narrative onto her. which is the kind of the human story of the individual, the ego, the family, the context, the milieu, the country, all of this stuff that we construct. The actual essence is this is somebody who is passing through energy and the universe, and so the inheritance on a kind of fundamental level is that it's cosmic and universal. But as we're moving through that plane, obviously, we're having experiences, and they also are fundamental. I think, especially if trauma is part of what crystallizes our relationship to a self, because it's through pain. That's hard, really, to go back to that genesis and say, hey, I'm from that. I used to think as well, because I left South London as well, so went into rehab, didn't really see people that, you know, were kind of still stayed around. And I remember I remember seeing something on one of those schools, you know, where it says, I think there was something I saw about me, left school, went here, and I just thought, what an absolute reduction. I was like, you know, had a spiritual awakening, saw into the fundamental workings of the universe, and realised that everybody were cosmic geniuses and poets, and you know, I mean, we reduce everything down. You know, the actual experience of being alive and the changes that we have internally and externally, and we have these really like reduced kind of ways of kind of communicating like who we are. It's all kind of on such a surface level. Also, we just wanted to say, Dee, when you was talking about home, and just having that kind of that desire to kind of be present in a certain way and on a certain level. I think for me, what's been helpful for me is sort of realizing that the home, like any home, has different rooms. So when we're just after the one state, really, we're not. It's not a home. That's a room. It might not be practical, and I think that's kind of what I suppose it's that kind of correspondence or transaction between those things, and the way that, you know, seeing, you know, the home as maybe having different rooms for different states, different energies, different experiences, and then it's kind of it feels more unified to me, rather than, you know, because I think that's just the demands that we're under. You know, we are, you know, we experience the world and ourselves on these different levels, and they bring different responsibilities, and it's finding different rooms in the home for, you know, the different experiences and the different needs and desires that we have, really. So I don't know, that just came through to me really strongly. I think.
Yeah, that's very resonant and very beautiful.
Yeah, because if we're just in one room, we're probably not going to feel at home, because it's hard to function like that.
Yeah.
I mean, we need the bathrooms, you know, you need the kitchen.
Yeah.
We've got, you know, the home has, you know, it is compartmented, although it's one sort of sacred space. But, you know, quiet room, calm room, you know, the different functions in the home, in the house. But yeah, no, it's been amazing. It's been, you look so well. You're just absolutely beaming. Just glowing. I feel like
that's the sun. That's the sunset.
The sun is setting. Artwork and this amazing creative art piece that is your life. So no, you're a big inspiration. You know, just everything that the way that you've kind of really taken on, you know, the pieces and the jigsaw of your life, and ultimately it's kind of survived and hung in there. But also kind of it's just very empowering how you've kind of started to marshal these pieces and kind of, you know, link into, you know, what's true and beautiful and human and magical about, you know, stuff, you know, really difficult life experiences. But you've actually, it's just, I don't know, it's just witnessing that alchemy, I suppose, that is possible. Just a reminder, obviously in my work, I kind of, the hope is that we see that more often than we don't see it. But you know, working in addiction and working, you know, with people going through different processes. But yeah, it's amazing. I'm just really, really proud of you.
Thank you.
You've just done amazing. Just so lovely to see. I always kind of had that. I really had a sort of trust that I couldn't. It wasn't an image as such of kind of how you are at the moment, but I just thought I don't know. I just always had a real faith that you was going to be all right.
Yeah,
Just
I
really
mean,
felt that very strongly. I know you didn't at the time, but you know, I definitely just felt he was going to be good.
yeah, like when we met, I was not okay. I was negative, not okay. You know, like I was, yeah, still going through a lot of the, um, not even healing, just kind of, I wasn't even rock bottom. I was like, if there was if there was the underground of the rock bottom, that was where I was. But
Yeah,
you know, even there, even in that place, there were these like sparks of light, and you know, following some of those sparks of light led me to the connections that I found back then, which and led me to you. Um, and we've been friends. We've been like in contact and in each other's lives despite the distance since then. And
yeah,
like, yeah, I don't think I would be here if it wasn't for your support. You know, like your presence and your support and your friendship and the love that you were able to show me at a time where I didn't believe that I could ever be loved or supported in that way. So yeah,
yeah.
I am
I'm,
immensely grateful.
yeah. We're just part of the gift that stays in motion. You know, it's stuff that was given to me. You keep it by passing it on. You're part of that story of the gift that moves from one to another. It doesn't rest anywhere.
I
Doesn't
love
become
that.
the propriety of anybody. So it's always in exchange. So I feel, you know, what I didn't have but was given to me when I didn't have it. You know, I've just been part of that process of being able to, you know, hold the bridge for people, or be the bridge for people when they're not able to to make that themselves at that point. But and that's what it's about, really. It's part of that story, I think. Of I mean, the amazing thing was just the, you know, it wouldn't have been possible really without the internet, would it? It was
Yeah.
but I always as well. If you look at sort of stages of grief, um, a lot of times you can use that as kind of gauging kind of where people are. That's where you was sort of denial, stroke, anger, stroke. It wasn't a place of, you know, it was definitely pre-contemplation. If we're talking cycle of change, on that cycle of change wheel. But that's okay. It's okay to be with, you know, sometimes people with that process, people try to do is to try to drag somebody into a stage that they're not in. It's about being with somebody at the stage where they are, and just trying to inhabit that and reduce maybe the isolation that somebody has, and also just to validate it, just to, you know, it is natural. We don't, we're not, I don't even want to say we're not perfect, but we do, you know, you don't, the loaf has to cook, doesn't it? You know, the loaf has to go through a process. You might want it, you know, yesterday, but this is going to take some heat. You know, heat will be present, and it will get hot. And this is just, but at some point, bread will be broken. We'll be okay. And people just want the bread. You know, they don't want the heat. They don't want the kitchen. They don't want the kiln. But sometimes that's where we get what we need. You know, that's part of that alchemizing. So yeah, I think, no, it was definitely a privilege, mate. Definitely a privilege. And thanks for trusting some nutcase from South London with your
Yeah, you were the
good
first person. You're the first person to tell me be kind to you, and I can't tell you how many people I have passed that on to at this point, especially like a couple of years ago, being called to like into being a healer or being an intuitive healer, and being showing up in that capacity. And the amount of people that I've said that to, every single time I say it, I'm like, I give thanks. I just give thanks to, like, the source above for like bringing you to me, because you were the first person to say. I remember it was a message. It was a long message. I was like freaking out. I sent you a message where I was freaking out, and you were like, and you talked me down from that freak out. And then after that, you signed off and you said, "Be kind to you. Take care and be kind to you." And that was the first time that I have heard those words strung in that way. That was the first time I thought I could give myself compassion. Like that was the first invite that got materialized, because I feel like I couldn't hear it any other way. But when you said that, and it was received, it was finally received, and it finally like kind of clicked into place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, we start to do the work of the destructive forces, don't we? We start to really, that's the energy that we inhabit. So, and that's turned, we're a vessel for that. We're turning it against ourselves in whatever ways. And I think as I've obviously been through that myself, I mean, I can hear when somebody is at that point. I can hear, I tune into the use of language, or the way that somebody comes at themselves, and yeah, I mean, there was times I didn't have that language, so I had to be given that language as a gift from, others that have walked that path. I just always say, there's footprints in the snow. This is a well trod path, of healing and change, and we don't walk it alone. I think that's one of the biggest things we can do for another human being is to see them and hear them and acknowledge them, and to be with that, and to be okay with that, and to not give loads of advice and try and change somebody and try and hammer them into, just to be present and to be congruent, and just share that kind of that acknowledgement, and it's all this stuff is okay. It's we're not the first, we won't be the last, and it's just amazing to see what you're making of it, and now being a guest on your the Alchemy Diaries.
I love that you called it the Alchemy Diaries. That's what I'm going to call this episode. That's what I'm going to call this episode now. Thank you for that.
No worries.
Oh, I absolutely love this so much. Thank you so much for everything you shared today. I definitely want to have you back on for another episode, I think, in the future.
Yeah, I'd love that. I mean, there's always just so much, isn't there? There's so much to to sort of say, not in a way of just let's just talk lots, but
it's the exchange, the gift of the exchange. Yeah.
There's so many routes into these conversations and starting points, and we don't always join the dots, I feel, and a good conversation hopefully should suggest other conversations.
Yes, that's beautiful. Yeah,
the day is drawing in, and I can see the light changes where you are. So yeah, the mark of a good conversation is that it's a marker for the next conversation. So bless you, my friend.
Thank you. So, okay, I'm just going to close out by saying that, I will put down, I will give all the links and all the details to where you find out more about Miggy's work, the photography and the poetry and the books. I'll put them all down in whatever text that I am including with this video. So if you're on my Patreon, it will be in the post that I will be introducing this video in. And if you're on YouTube, it will be in the description box. And okay, I'm going to start recording. So I'll see you guys soon. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I have enjoyed being part of it. And I'll see you all real soon.